Warfare. I'm Dr. Jordan Lauer alongside my co-host, the one and only Blake Bellamy. Thank you for being here today, Blake.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Before we get started today, some quick program reminders. Make sure to follow us on all of our socials. We're at EDU Warfare on X. I am Dr. Jordan Lauer on Blue Sky. Don't forget our full video episodes are on our YouTube channel, which is just Educational Warfare. Make sure when you're there, you subscribe and hit that like button so you can catch all the new episodes as they drop, our shorts, anything else we put on there. We appreciate any comments you make. Just letting us know how we're doing. And if you want to say some comments or anything you want to talk about or something just kind of touches you and makes you want to reach out, please do so. You can do so at our email at educationalwarfare.pod@gmail.com. And, super exciting. This is all back together. You can also grab my book, The Two Backpacks, it's doing great. And, if you find it's on Amazon, it's on my website, jordanlauer.com. If you grab a copy, if you enjoy it, please let your friends and family know as well. And please leave a review on it because that really lets other people know it's being enjoyed. And I appreciate everybody's support and kind words on it thus far. It's been awesome. It's been a great experience and I'm excited to continue to watch it grow. So reach out, let us know if you have grabbed a copy or grabbing one. Email us at educationalwarfare.pod@gmail.com. Let us know what you think or let us know you got one. We appreciate it. We'll give you a shout out. Jumping into it real quick right now. Beginning fall. We're in Tennessee, so we get a little bit of a false fall there for a bit. But the smell of freshly sharpened pencils, coffee strong enough to resurrect the dead, and parents cheering as the bus pulls away can only mean one thing. We're all back to school now. All right. So many schools are now getting fully back across the country. Some places start early. Tennessee starts super early. Some places are just getting going. I always love jumping on like any social media groups I'm on for a certain topic and like, where are you at in your content? And some people are like unit 2 and some people are like, we just started 3 days ago. It's crazy how there's such a difference there. But since we're getting there and it's fully back into swing, that means that there's going to be some back to school madness. And that's what we're talking about today. The changes in your lifestyle, you had everything figured out just as soon as you get everything figured out for summer, boom, school starts. There's changes, new schedules, new requirements, stressors. So all of that's going on. So Blake, what do you kind of think about? What's your thoughts on the going back to school and the back to school madness?
I feel like everyone's excited. Everybody's locked in the first week or two. You think that your students are just angels because they're being so good. And then week 3 and 4 happens, and then they get comfortable, and then
Yeah,
they think that you're their best friends. And it's not the
absolutely.
case. And on the teacher side, it's just wild. There's so many changes, as you mentioned, just class changes, getting new students constantly, especially us being in the South. I've gotten several students this year where they come from up north and they're just now starting and we're pretty deep into it now and they have to jump in, so catching them up and kind of feeling bad for them because they're a month and some change behind and they want to do well and they're very bright kids, but it's just hard catching up. And when they have 7 classes, it's like taking on everything. Teacher side's wild. I kind of wish that our supply money can go toward like aspirin and coffee and energy drinks and all the good stuff that we desperately need, and tons of tissues and wipes, sanitizer wipes, because these kids are so dirty and they touch everything and they're always wanting to borrow pencils and pens and paper. It's like, boy, quit leaving your backpack at home. You know where you're going. That's like me
Right.
trying to get here and getting my car keys. It just,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's madness. It's madness.
Asking your principal every day, can I borrow your car keys? No, you have your own car. Well, I'm just doing that. Yeah, it's like, you're talking about the money for school and everything. It is just, sometimes you wonder if that is if that's just some type of veiled hazard pay, right? We're sitting there. So is this just to make us feel a little better? And you try to use it for everything, but like you said, you really can't. So it's definitely an interesting part getting into it. So as we talk about being back at school, let's start with teachers. Okay, like you kind of mentioned a little bit. We have the expectation on the teacher side, the expectation versus reality. The expectation is, hey, I'm going back to school. Many teachers work a lot during the summer. If anybody's listening to this that's not a teacher, when they're like, oh, you get summers off, a lot of teachers are redefining their curriculum. They're rewriting things. They're looking into it. They're trying to dig for better lessons. very few who are just like, well, jumping back into it. The days of, especially with a lot of these changes that have been happening over the last couple of years, the days of just having a filing cabinet and pulling out the same thing you did the last 5 years are long gone. Not even kind of a thing of the past. You might be able to do that for a couple of things, but I don't know any teacher who really pulls something out, and unless it's an emergency situation, like I have to go, I have to leave school, and then like, yeah, this will work. But I don't know any teacher who pulls anything out, an old activity, and just looks at it like, yep, that's good. You're always, So you think like when you're like, oh, I've done that all summer, I'm on top of it, right? And I'm going to be sitting there and sipping coffees. I'll be planning. I'm going to have my beautiful classroom, and then reality actually sets in. You think you're going to get that time in your room, that time to kind of take a breath, time set up. And really, it's endless meetings, you getting in and everything working when you left, and nobody really being in your room other than a few maybe things, but nobody like fully using your room. And all of a sudden, your tech's not working. You discover there's broken desks, or you've lost desks magically. I've come in and you're looking around, and you're like, I have enough desks for 17 kids. I know I'm going to get 28 to 30. What's happening? So now you're looking around, and the email's like, I need some desks. It's much more hectic than anyone would really expect. And there's nothing, I've been doing this 16 years. There's nothing that really can prepare you for it. Every year I think, oh, this is going to be good. And there's just something that takes up some time. Some meetings or the schedule shift, like, oh, we want you focused in this PD so you can use it. And the problem with that is every teacher sitting there like, I need to figure out what I'm doing. This is great, but I can't really apply this when I'm worried about, is what I'm doing going to be enough? Are the kids going to pay attention? Are they going to like it? So that's definitely a big part of it. So when we're talking about reality versus, or expectation versus reality, what do you kind of think of there? What some things that jump into your mind?
I think it's the best example of the art of teaching. I think it really takes so much flexibility. It takes a certain kind of person with mental problems to be able to get into teaching and love it, because we're throwing so much stuff at you. And then we enjoy it. We love doing it. We still do it anyway, because our entire goal is just being there for the kids and being there for the school. So it is fun. Sometimes like getting stuff thrown at you gets overwhelming, and it does lead to like teacher burnout, for instance. I feel like you just have to embrace it, because every year is going to be different. Every day is different. Every day, that's one thing I love about this job. It's like no matter what, you have no idea what's going to happen with next period, next day, next week. You plan for things, and then just life happens. So it is exciting. I think that's one thing that keeps our job very exciting, because like you mentioned, it's rare that we ever just pull out something from an old filing cabinet. Like you're always tweaking, you're always working. And even sometimes during the day, like we'll meet every Monday for our PLTs, and we'll just like float an idea of like, oh, that's a great idea for an activity, and then just type it up and have it ready after lunch for the next group of students. So it's fun to me. It's always overwhelming, because you do plan and you think the year's going to go certain ways, and then there's so many wrenches that happen every day and every week. You just got to adapt and just see the good of it, and just see it as another challenge you got to overcome and conquer. So I always enjoy it. I like the craziness.
Yeah, well, we've talked about that. For anybody who's new to the show, there's some of our first episodes did a 3-part series on exhaustion. We did exhaustion at work, exhaustion at home, exhaustion at life, exhaustion in relationships, and all the things that like just not only teaching, but just exhaustion in general. So if you're not a teacher, or somebody's not a teacher, check those out. And in those we mentioned, and we talked about teacher burnout, but in those especially we mentioned how teachers become adrenaline junkies, right? There are many times as a teacher, and we're all friends here, right? We're all teachers, so we can talk about the parts we don't say out loud a lot. There, almost every teacher has sometimes like sitting there like, if I could go be a museum curator, that'd be cool. I love history. We kind of think of that. What's that alternative job we may have? But then you think about it, and you're like, I could not sit at a desk for 8 hours. There's no way. I would not know. I'd be that guy walking around the office bugging people. I'd get that email from my boss like, Dr. Lauer, I'm going to need to see you at your desk at some point, because that's where the job is. And I feel I'd just be wandering around talking to people, because it is so chaotic. And it gets to the point to where, as frustrating as it is, you would miss it. My wife went from being a classroom teacher to 4 years. She became a director at a private tutoring company that had a private school attached to it. And that was one of the first, when her first couple of days, especially when there were no students there, she was just in an office kind of getting stuff in order and working. And she was just, this is like weird. I have my Pandora turned up loud just to simulate like some of the noise she's used to. And it took her a while to get used to it. So yeah, there's definitely that. And the chaos, you come to love it. As long as it's not stacked, right? As long as it's not, hey, every day, this is just a nightmare. But like, as long as it's productive, you feel like you're actually doing something, it becomes a really good thing. So, and teachers with that, we're talking about teacher prep reality. We talked a little bit about meetings. That's a hard part for beginning of school again, because you come in and all of a sudden there's this, always get the email of like, here's our plan. And every district's different. Some districts, oh, you're in your room most of the time. Some people are like, you get a day at the end in your room. Some people are like, you get a day at the beginning in your room. There were meetings. Some are like, you're in meetings, work at lunch. Sorry, and that's always difficult, because that's, you're coming in, and I get wanting the necessity of like forming your teachers and making sure that they have all the do's and don'ts of the year. But any other meeting in any profession, most of this could be done in an email. That's just the oldest cliche now of the working life is this could be done easily, quickly. And that's really difficult, because it makes it feel like at some point, and you can agree with me or disagree, I feel it almost ups the anxiety of the beginning of the year, because you're just kind of like in your room, and you either have to work a Saturday or something. And it's so, if you really want to catch up, and I feel, we're both men. We're also both in the history side, the social studies area. And needless to say, men's rooms are much less decorated than female rooms, right? I don't feel like I'm being, and there's some guy, I have a decently decorated room. My walls are not barren, but there are just some rooms where they have the borders up and they're like your dream chart and like everything. And it's all these things you're hot gluing. And I feel it's just, wow, you need 2 days just to do that. I'm all right, flag hung up, poster hung up, desk in order. Let's do this. I could not imagine the anxiety of it. I just had basically unpacking a house. Some teachers you see carrying all these boxes. Do you live here 10 months of the year? Am I going to walk by one night working late and just see you blowing up an air mattress? So I think that can bring the anxiety up a lot as well. And
yeah, that's really how we were. We were just in constant meetings. The whole time I was just like, I need to get my room in order, because it's just desks and blank walls. And, because you do need about an hour or so just to, and our school is massive. So we had to carry boxes and boxes in from our car. And that's, we're walking a couple miles just to do that, it seems like. So you need some time. You need some time for your room just to get settled, because you're going to be in there all day. So it needs to be comfortable and less stressful as possible, because the blank walls, they stress me out. I feel like I'm in a prison cell or something. A very educated 100%. Prison cell, I guess.
Right, 100%. Like, yeah, you definitely don't want to be sitting there and be like staring around and the kids are in there. Like, it's like any room, the more you have in it that's personalized, even though it becomes super comfortable where you don't even really notice it, it does make it just like, this is a place that's safe. So I always try to make sure but that's a part of it. So there's meetings in the beginning. I mentioned the tech not working. That's always one of the worst things. Like, we're trying to, you want to integrate as much as possible. You want to have these like dynamic lessons that really make the kids, you don't want them to you want them to understand this is going to be a challenging class, but there's going to be different things that can make it interesting. So a lot of us obviously are going away from the old kind of paper activities and even textbooks. Most social study classes don't even have textbooks. They're all like online, and all of a sudden, boom, your tech doesn't work. You think your screen's going to work, or your smart board, whatever you have in your school, and boom, it doesn't. So now you're like, especially in those first couple, it's a completely different thing when it happens in November, right? In November, if my stuff doesn't work, I'm like, oh, well, guys, it doesn't work. So here's what we're going to do. And they're like, oh, free day. I'm like, no, we're going to learn. You're going to learn today. So that happens. But in the beginning, it's almost like going up there for a stand-up set as a comedian, and you're like mic not working, and it's you're not like able to kind of riff with it. You're like, what's happening? And everybody's like, this is, it's really hard to get back on track. So that's always frustrating in the beginning. And that's nobody's fault. You go from nobody in the building to 100 plus teachers.
Thousands of people.
Yeah, 100 plus teachers trying to log on all the stuff, kids trying to log on all their devices. So nobody's being blamed here. It's just one of those facts of life at the beginning, and they got to get it all ironed out and all that. So, but it is stressful. So you have that teacher, the reality of, it's going to be a nice, smooth transition. I did that work, to where the expectation to where the reality is it is unpredictable. And you can't, as a teacher, any new teachers out there, if you're first year or you're maybe thinking about going into teaching, that understand that. Like, that's not you. There's very little you can do. You can be super, super prepared, but there's very little you can do for just the random doses of chaos. You're just going to have to kind of flow with it. And it's going to be that way almost every year. There have been some years where I'm like, man, that was great. That was super smooth. There have been some years where I was like, oh my God, I just bombed that. These guys think I have no idea what I'm doing. So it definitely goes back and forth. So looking at, so that's kind of teacher side. Now I kind of look at parents, going into parents in panic mode. Okay. First thing I think about is, I'm a parent, you're a parent. You still have little ones. Most mine are. I'm luckily on the roller coaster of parenting while in school. I'm now coming up from the giant dip of, like, now my kids are old enough to where I'm like, what school supplies do they need? They're like, I don't know. And I'm like, great, cool. Do you have a list? And the lists are getting smaller because they're now in, like, high school and solid middle school. And it's, okay, here's the deal. You have this many classes. I'm going to get you a folder and a notebook unless you'd like a binder. But here's folder and notebook for each one. Here's some, like, we can pretty much do that. But when they're younger, it's a thing. You're getting all these, some teachers like, I need 76 snack-sized baggies. What? Where'd you get the number? 2, like, what do you all do? I get like a couple, but 76 for each kid. It's always like that stuff. And, you kind of have eccentric teachers, which, we love all of you. And because your eccentricity makes you probably a teacher these kids remember for the rest of your life, and you're special, but it's still, we're going to go after kind of everybody here. But those teachers like, only red and blue crayons. Do not let me see a yellow. And you're like, no, why? Okay. So it's kind of funny. It's almost like when you hear those stories of famous artists being like when they have their dressing room demands, like, I only want brown M&Ms. That's kind of what it reminds me of a little bit. It's like these special things. So they have the supply list, and many of these supply lists are longer than CVS receipts. So you have that. But then I think the biggest thing, and you kind of, especially kind of tell us your perspective on this, having a younger child, is the change in schedules. Like, we were there all the time, and now all of a sudden, why don't you take the younger child side, and I'll kind of get the older child, since that's kind of both of our niches right now.
Yeah, young, obviously she's not in school yet, and I'm kind of looking forward to that, just because I do hear the horror stories of them needing like 1,000 colored pencils and 1,000 crayons, a blanket for nap time, and all of that crap. At least on my end, like, seeing the fact that so many teachers do have so many requirements. I have zero supply list. I was like, just give something to write with and something to write on. That is all you really need in my class. And I'm kind of like what you're mentioning earlier with the tech. I'm kind of like a 77-year-old man. I prefer paper and pen just because I don't want to be handcuffed, because so many times at tech I'll have all these great lessons. I do use the computers a lot, but I need a backup, and I never rely on it. We've done days where, like, you take the ACT or like these end of course exams, and then the Wi-Fi goes out, and that derails everything. I know our AP exams, that kind of happen. It's kind of scary. So I try to keep the
Nightmare.
materials very minimum on the teacher side, just because I know that, one, some students can't afford it, because that is things. You have 7 classes and they all require this, and some schools have class fees. And I remember that being an issue when I was a child, just growing up. Just like, man, it's expensive to go to public school. Thought this stuff was supposed to be free.
Yeah. And that's you definitely don't have the. Did you notice? What was it like for you? We can kind of do both parent and teacher, just kind of the emotional side of, you were there with your daughter every day, and now you're going back to work. So even the emotional side of teachers who do have maybe young children who are now switching in this everyday thing.
It's sad, man. Because I get up early around like 5:30 in the morning. The baby wakes up around 6:15. I have to leave by 6:30 max. So sometimes I'll sit here for like 30 minutes to maybe 15. Sometimes never. I won't sit here in the morning, and I'll get home from work sometimes around 4:15. Sometimes like 5:30, 5:15 if we had meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And then baby goes to bed super early. So it's like, go from seeing her for 18 hours a day to around 3. And that's sad. Some kids I have twice a day, I see them more than my own child. And about to have another one in probably a few weeks. So it's going to really be a curveball in that, because my first daughter, she was born in the summer. So I was there the entire time, and that was really great. So it is. It's sad. It's an adjustment period for sure. I'm starting to get used to it. I feel like you don't really get used to it, like not seeing your child. But that's the whole deal. So going back to school was not fun, and I'm back in school now. So like every once a week at night, got an hour-long class that just cuts into it again. So it's hard. It's a big schedule and having to work sometimes games and showing up to events because you want to be there for your students. So school is it's a lot. Being at our school, it's a huge commitment to the community.
Yeah, and that's a great part of it too. Is one thing that teachers were really torn about. We did talk about this too in those exhaustion episodes too. Is that teachers we want to be there. This is like we want to be at those events, and as much as you mentioned it, you see some students more than you see your kids. I mean, especially those teachers in block schedules who have maybe a kid twice. I mean, you're looking at basically 3-ish hours with them, and sometimes that's more than you get at home with your children at night. But like, you really want to, when those kids ask you, hey, you coming to this, or hey, you coming to this, you don't want to just like, no, it's like, I'm off work, man. That doesn't really work. That's not exactly, they don't see it that way. They are like, oh, you just don't want to like support me. It's very, very similar to when your own child, I mean, hopefully your kid's never like, are you coming to my game? If they have something, I know you had to work, you'd be able to. If you were like, no, I'm not going, or hey, I'm not going to go to that because I'm tired. Your kid would be like, what? And so they think about it the same way. And a lot of that it's that very needed talk about it. I talk about it again in the book and the two backpacks. One of the things these kids are doing is they're building their own community, right? They're trying to kind of pull away from their parents, to not in a negative way, but just to figure out who they are. And oftentimes they do that with trusted members of the community because they know, hey, this is a person who there's a person who I can trust, but this is a person who I care about, and I want to be found worthy. And not that any of us make it not, but that's the mental process. I want to be worthy of that. Am I a good enough person where people want to support me? And that's a very powerful thing. And that's why you see so many kids at the teenage level, especially get really into their youth groups at church, because that's a separate community. They have a pastor who's like young and kind of reflects what they maybe want to be personality wise. They have people their own age. It's considered their parents aren't getting mad at them for doing it. They're not going, hey, why are you going to your church community? It's a very positive way of getting that. So they're doing that too. So teachers listening, understand when they do that, they want you around because they want to be, I'm worthy of being supported, or these events are. So it's really hard to say no to that. And then you have kids at home of your own, and you're just like, oh man, especially when they're little. I coached football at high school level when all of my kids were under 12, and a bigger high school. That's not like 3 to 5:30, and then all right, see you later. It's 3 to 6:30, and then it's breaking down what the next day is. It's possibly talking about film. So I'm walking in at 8:00 every night, and that's not even game night. I'm not home before midnight, so it was always I'd get home at 8:00, especially when it was like early this time of year, and my kids would run out. They're like and they're like, come on the trampoline with us, and I'd just been at practice in 95 degrees for 3 hours. So I'm like on the trampoline, like they're like laughing, and I'm like like kind of crying. Jelly legs. I tried to come up with as many games on the trampoline where I could like lay on the trampoline and like mess with them, roll around. My dad had this game when we had a trampoline where we called it steamroller. He just like rolled back and forth. We had to jump over him. And, if he got us, he'd like playfully like roll over us. Yeah, and now I'm like, as a kid, I was like, that's so fun. But now as an adult, I'm like, man, he just did that because he worked 12 hours and just wanted to be able to lay down, let us do all the work. So yeah, you definitely see that there's a lot of extracurricular things that people don't think about. And it's very difficult to be that teacher who, unless you have, obviously, I'm at the season of life where my kids have everything pretty much the same night our school does. So I always feel bad that I'm like, no, I can't come to the game because my kid does this. The kids understand that. They don't want you to be like, yeah, I'm going to blow off my son to come see you. They'd be like, ooh. But it makes you feel bad because you want to go see something. You want to go support them and let them see you there. It's very powerful when they look up and they see you looking at them. So looking at that, on my side I talked a little about that. One thing about school coming up is now all of the new things coming in. Like, for the older kids, they're going to start getting, if you had kids in sports, most likely if they're playing football or anything, they already had a practice schedule. But now that shifts to the end of school. So you're kind of trying to decide like who's getting who. Like, am I coming straight home from work, or am I picking the kid up? Or, hopefully you live close by. Both of us have the thing. We don't work close to our school. So it's always like when I have football practices to pick the boys up from, I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll stay at school till this time and go do this. And it does that. So it's a lot of schedule change, which can really throw parents' lives into a loop because you just had 2 months of like, my kids are home, or my kids are at this practice, they'll be home here. And now you're kind of adjusting then games on top of that. So it definitely becomes a lot. For non-sports people, you also have, these extracurricular meetings and groups and clubs and things they do. So that can definitely be very stressful. So, parents, we get that not only for teachers, but for you, it's a big jump too. And, we talked a little bit about coming back to school. The madness with that too is one thing I think about. And again, it's in my book. And if anybody out there has any stories, remember, if you want to hear more of this, hit like or subscribe, hit that button. You get some more of this. We'll have some shorts coming out, and we'll obviously talk more as the school year goes along about different issues. But in the two backpacks, I talk about how one stressor for parents is that the kids' life changing of their life kind of being in a social media bubble during the summer. They might have a couple close friends, again, sports things where that come over, but the majority of them legit go out and just kind of hang out with their friends digitally. And now that's coming into the real world, right? Now they're being forced back into one-on-one connections. And that can be difficult for the kid. That's why parents, you may see your child come home moody after school. That is because it is, frankly, when you don't train yourself to be around people, being around people is exhausting. Like, I don't know about you, Blake, but every year, because I don't really talk that much during the summer, and right now, as my wife is listening to or watching this on our YouTube channel at Educational Warfare, I guarantee she's rolling her eyes because, like, bro, you talk. But, like, I don't talk, like, as I'm doing, like, stuff like that. After day 3, my voice is gone, because I've talked so much. And for our teens, their brains are like that. Getting back in that public, 15 different people, keeping up a conversation, not being able to answer on your own time, it is draining. And so if they're coming home moody, that's why. So another way to kind of stop some of those arguments that we may have at home is parents understand that again, not giving them a pass, right? Like, it's just helping you understand. And that's the whole point of the book. That's why it's called Understanding Teens and What They Carry, is that if you understand, then you're better equipped, because you're the adult, you have all the tools, right? We're still dealing with teens. So if you understand what may be going on, then it could avoid an argument or a fight or just some type of unhappy element to our household life. So we see a lot of that. I was reading, Blake, that Dr. John Haidt, who wrote, or Haidt, it's a written test, I don't know how to say it, that he wrote The Anxious Generation. One of the things he was talking about, he had on his blog After Babel, or his Substack After Babel, which is just great. He talks a lot about technology. He had an author on there who was talking about that he was at a TED Talk, and the audience member asked all the Gen X members to raise their hand on if they remember playing in the woods, playing in the park, sneaking off to this part of town and doing this. And a lot of them raised their hands. And then he asked millennials, and there was less. And he said, and then he just kind of stopped there and he said, now imagine losing 70% of those memories. And the author was a Gen Zer. And the Gen Zer said, I don't have to remember or imagine losing them. I was literally sitting there shrinking because I never snuck out. I never played in the woods with my friends. We never built a fort. We didn't do any of that. He said, my friends when we were together, we were either on some type of, chat room together, like on some type of online thing, Omegle, or something that they're doing that, like making fun of people or mess around with people, or we're like literally might be scrolling side by side. That was how we had fun. That's what we did, watching a movie maybe, but still our phones are out. So like their hanging out has even changed to where it's not even an understandable, like it's not even a comparable thing anymore. Like they don't understand when you say go outside and play, because there's not that model. Like it's not like, oh yeah, like there are some, of course, now we're talking generalities. Like yes, there are kids who still go out and do that and parents who still do it, but the majority of kids don't. So like, what do you kind of think about that? Like thinking of that, like shift to coming back to school.
It is, and it's just isolation. Yeah, they go in there all summer and there's isolated, especially, if you live in like a rural school district where, you can't just walk over to your neighbor's house. So a lot of them, instead of playing in the woods, like if they do live out in the country, they're opting toward the online because they're hanging out with their friends online, whether it's like these video game chats, like constantly. Like that's all they do. They spend time always on their phones and their Xbox and their PlayStations. And it's kind of sad. Because I'm 31, but I still I remember having like kind of cell phones in school. I didn't get my first iPhone until I was 19, but still, it was definitely shifting there because I remember hanging out with a lot of friends. Like the older I got, less outside, more video games. And then
Mm-hmm.
whenever, just calling people on your cell phones, it's kind of sad. Hopefully, I'm going to raise my children where they have to play outside and keep phones away a little bit because isolation just breeds anxiety and depression and then getting immersed into hundreds and hundreds of people. It's kind of scary. It gives me anxiety even just thinking about that. Just going from a huge culture shift. And then not only that culture shift, you have all these teachers like saying you have to remember this, you have to remember this. You have a test on Tuesday, quiz on Friday of next week. Like it's stressful. It's hard to be a student right now. I'm glad I graduated when I did.
Yes, yeah, I love that point of just like that. It gives you anxiety because yeah, like I was lucky enough to where I had I had woods behind my house and we'd build forts and have paintball tournaments, and my parents get upset because the paintball tournaments would move from the woods to the side of the house, and then the side of the house is orange all over it because we're awful shots. It's like in Dumb and Dumber. It's like, Harry, you're alive and you're an awful shot. Like that's basically what my dad was looking at. It's bad, but yeah, and they go from this to they go from that digital world where they might see a couple and then all of a sudden thrown into it, and their brain just can't handle a lot of that because it's still developing. And then you get kind of the stressors and the anxiety alone of, do I want to, they all want to look nice, they all want to look a certain way, you got to fit in. And so this time period of like having that social media immersion it's really interesting watching kids' anxiety levels go up, and that's it's a lot what they talk about, the anxious generation. Some other work like I'm and I talk about in the two backpacks, which you can get now on Amazon. I talk about how a lot of kids, like there are kids who literally don't understand what to do in a social situation because they're so used to having time to process it because they can just let people, all the kids are like, oh, they left me undelivered. Like, but you can do that as a time to think about how you react. But when somebody's like, why'd you do that? Staring at you, you're like, it's a similar with AI, right? Like AI, one of the big things we're talking about with AI is that like, hey, you can't use it all the time. And that's why it's scary for younger people, because as an adult, we have both done critical thinking. We've done a lot of critical thinking. So when we use it to supplement something we want to do as a time saver, it's less detrimental. But when a child who has yet to do a lot of critical thinking is now using this as basically their detached brain, their critical thinking skills aren't being developed. It's basically like if you imagine an athlete going out there and every time they went to run sprints, they were like tagged in a proxy, like, you're up, man, and that guy ran the sprints. In the middle of the fourth quarter, that player's going to be dead because that guy can't come and run for you. And that's kind of what it's like.
Yeah, it's a bunch of just what do I do with my hand moments because nobody knows what to do.
Yeah, it's just the kids are like, you're like, hey, what do you guys think would happen if this? And they're sitting there looking around, like hoping somebody answer, and just like, like,
I don't know. You tell
yeah,
me.
right. Yeah, it's like we just talked about this. Yeah, so I mean, I really like that, and luckily, I think that you are, your daughter, especially like my kids, sadly, are fully into it now. Like, they have been part of it, and we've tried to limit it as much as possible. And I think that's the hardest thing with social media and stuff like that is that it's not so much what you want to do, it's the pressure. And it almost sounds silly saying it. It makes me feel like bad as a parent even saying it, but it's like the pressure that your kid comes to you and is like, every other one of my friends has this. And I mean, at some point you're like, wait, sorry, like you don't get it. But like, I'm sitting there, like I remember our oldest at 11 was like, hey, can I get a phone and this? And we were like, one of, I think Instagram. We were like, no. It's like,
It's like, no, you're
well,
four.
yeah, like all my friends have it. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, why are all these parents giving? And that was 11. Like, 11, you see 6-year-olds. I'm like, why are y'all giving it to them? And because it's almost like the perfect moment of like social media and phones and things like that. Like just TikTok, entertainment things, anything a kid can do on a phone, even if they're games, has become the perfect like babysitter. And I'm not trying to say that in a negative way, but for that kind of like, this is a bad term, so I'm going to use it, the like helicopter parent, right? Like you can literally make sure your kid's around and they're doing something. Like I'm sure my parents hated it when I was little and they were home and there was a rainy day because it was just grab the old VHS and plop it in And that was like that movie had to keep my attention while they were trying to do something. And then they'd play a game with me. But we only had so many movies to roll with. So like, if all of a sudden I was like, nah, this isn't for me. I had nothing to go to. Like now I'm just sitting there like, I'm like in Family Guy where Stewie's like Lois, or he's like mom, 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 Lois. And she's like, what? And he's like, hi, and then runs away. Like I guarantee that was me. And so, but now it's kind of like it's endless entertainment, and they're not out there doing that, so you don't have that worry. But speaking of that, like independence outside, I was looking at some research that says there's some areas like the number one way to deal with some of the issues our kids are having with anxiety, especially one of the number one ways to lower anxiety is to give kids a massive dose of independence, because they won't be because the one way to treat anxiety is basically immersion therapy, right? Like if I say I'm anxious around big dogs, the only way to really fix that is get me around big dogs for extended periods of time. Two problems with that. Number one, most therapists don't want to do that because it's difficult to do that to a child. Like it is not easy to be like, well, you're terrified of dogs, putting you in a room with 4 Rottweilers, buddy, and like kids like crying in the corner. You have to, there's a very fine line of walking that and making sure you're not adding to the trauma. And two, a lot of kids don't want to do it after a full day of school. They're just kind of mentally exhausted. And you can't ethically throw a kid and they're like, hey, what are we doing? We're going to get ice cream, buddy. And then here, face your fears. Like you can't really do that. You have to kind of be very upfront with them. So what they're finding out though, and it's a very new kind of step, is instead of that type of immersion therapy, it's basically independence therapy. The therapist will have a kid come over, and let's say the kid's super anxious around crowds. The therapist is like, oh, you're super anxious around crowds. That's cool. Let's talk about it for a little bit. Hey, by the way, go down to the store that's down the street and buy me 4 bags of Doritos. I need that. The kid's like, what? By myself? Like, yep, go do it. And they go down, and they walk down the street, down the sidewalk, and they buy Doritos. What are they doing? They're on the sidewalk where there's people. They're navigating streets where there's people. They're in the store where there's people, but they're accomplishing something because they're doing it independent. I guarantee that child has never gone in the store by themselves before. So, and that is kind of helping them do it. And that's a super fascinating thing. And I'm super fascinated to see where the research goes. But, that's the kind of a thing you have to think of, is like letting them do that. And if they don't have that before, school is that just immersion of people. And it can definitely be problematic. So real quick, shift gears, kind of talking about the students themselves. That's an interesting thing when we talk about back to school madness, and again, if you're enjoying it, or if you want to, add something to it, you can email us at educationalwarfare.pod@gmail.com, or, like and subscribe, comment on our YouTube page, which just search up at youtube.com/educational warfare. But some of the things here with the students on day one are definitely super interesting, because like you said, as a teacher, you cannot, it's like in the NFL, Blake's wearing a Titans jersey, I can see the little NFL tag on his throat there. Week 1 is the great deceiver in the NFL, right? Everybody's just, there's nothing you can do to be in that shape of game shape. Everybody's figuring stuff out. I'd say, like you said, the first week, at least the first 4 days, that's the great deceiver in school, because you're there and you're like, man, I was talking about my syllabus and they were listening and engaged, and then that goes out the window quick as soon as they start to figure you out. Where's the bathroom 47 times, or can I go to the bathroom 47 times? Students forgetting their own names. That's my favorite. Like I'm like, what's your name? They're like, Sean. I'm like, okay, we're not even gonna try for the last name right now, Sean, because that was a struggle. Like they're just so nervous and stuff. So like, do you have any like first day or week shenanigans that you always kind of deal with, that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait till we get this ironed out?
They just ask me, just teaching like AP government and U.S. history. I'll get a lot of weird questions. Like I think it was the end of week 1 or the beginning of week 2. The kids were doing their assignment, and I was kind of walking around the class, and this kid goes, hey, Mr. Bellamy, what are your thoughts on the 2020 presidential election? I'm like, oh boy. I was like, here we go. I basically said who the 2 people ran and who won, and that was about it. He goes, I know you can give me more than that. I was like, I'm not.
No.
They'll ask a lot of weird questions. They'll see a ring, and then they'll be like, is your wife pretty? I'm like, obviously. Even if she wasn't, I know how to answer that question. Just weird personal questions. I get those a lot. It's just some very, very strange ones. And then, yeah, and then way too personal. Like, I can't answer that. Why would I answer that? And then just kids like getting to know them. Like some kid will make a first impression that's really good, and then look at the schedule the next day, and then they're not in your class anymore. So it's just like just learning who people are and trying to adjust whatever possible you can, and managing the weird questions and new personalities, and sometimes personalities clash, and or some of them really thrive around each other. So it's always a weird mixture because you're getting like 30 kids that are vastly different, and seeing how that culture is going to work for the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I am one of my favorite personal questions because I get the same thing. Like they just kind of ask me a bunch of personal questions. My favorite one ever was a kid asked me if my hair was real. That was weird. They were like, "Is your hair real?" I was like, "My hair?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I was like, I wish at that point it wasn't, so I could like popped it off like Lego hair and just be like a bald guy and be like, "Nope." I was like, "Yes, my hair is very real." And they're like, "Oh, okay, okay, cool, cool." You know, and I'm just like, "What else you got?" And just some of the stuff they asked if my voice is really this deep, and I was like, "No, no, I'm a soprano, but I'm just too embarrassed. I'll start talking normal in December." And the one of the things I get too is like the generations, this current generation, this crop of students, year after year, and I don't know if it's because it doesn't really go over in text, and maybe that's why they are god awful at understanding sarcasm. I mean,
Yes.
you can say the most sarcastic thing and they will believe you. And I don't know what to really do with that. I actually this year for the first time told them that I was sarcastic. And I never am like, sarcastically mean. Oh, well, they were like, "How do we do on the test?" Like, well, everybody else did well, but you know how you usually do. I'm never that sarcastically mean, but I'm like sarcastic in some silly questions. Like one time my kid was like, "What's the test over?" I was like, "The French Revolution." They're like, "Oh, okay." I'm like, "What's on that?" And I'm like, "Well, it's in French because it's the French Revolution. So did you study your French?" And they were like, I was like, "Bro, no, that's sarcasm. Of course I'm not giving you a French language test." And they're like, I'm like, and it's funny. Year after year, it's gotten worse.
Absolutely. I've only been teaching 4 years, and absolutely, like I feel like when I first started, they were catching my jokes, and then either I'm getting less funny or they're just not understanding. And I hope it's that they're not understanding because sometimes I'll throw in some real good dingers, and they will not get it at all.
Yeah, or there's that one who does. That's my favorite because I quickly move that kid close to me, like close to the front, not as a punishment, just so we can have like a moment. Because I'll be like, I'll say something like, "Well, yeah," or something like that, and they'll look up and they kind of chuckle because they totally got it, but nobody else did. And I'm like, "Yeah, me and you, fist bump, we got a thing. This is going to be fun." But yeah, they I don't know why that's a thing. So I had to this year tell my kids, I'm like, "Hey, I'm sometimes I'll be sarcastic about things. If you are unsure, if you're starting to worry, please ask me. Like, hey, were you being sarcastic?" Or, and I even took it from the Big Bang Theory where like Sheldon, the character, is trying to learn about sarcasm. So like when somebody says it, they'll be like, "Sarcasm?" And they're like, "Yes." They're like, "Yes." Because he just doesn't get sarcasm. And I've always said too, I really think they need to make like a sarcasm font. Like it's a special font. Like for your, like you select it on your phone, put that way when it comes across, it's like, okay, like they're being sarcastic because maybe that's the problem that they don't see it, doesn't really come over on text, so they just
Maybe that
don't
should
use
just
it.
be in italics. We should just anytime we're being sarcastic, just write it in italics. I think that's
Yeah,
an
start
option.
italicizing. Yeah, I kind of like my font idea because I could monetize that. Like,
Yeah,
like italics is there, so maybe I like Lauer ease. I don't know. I'll come up with a cool font name.
yeah. Jordanese.
Sarcasmo. Yeah, Sarcasmo. Something like that. Like here's a Sarcasmo font. It's just like weird. I wanted to be like curvy but kind of angry. And looking at that, we talked about the hidden stress of that, and again, we're looking at, we're kind of making fun. I don't get that, but again, let's look on their side. Like, joking aside, a lot of times I often think they don't understand sarcasm because they are so on edge that their brain's not letting them. That they are like, "Wait, what? Like I have to learn French for this test?" Like because they're constantly getting hit. Again, I talk about in the book how I was talking to a student once, and he was really a kid. He was a kid who started off really kind of down, like low, like just couldn't get anything, and worked to really pull his grades up, and was kind of on this steady pace. Didn't shoot up to an A, but was just like, "Hey, this is a lot better." And then all of a sudden, kind of like ticking a little down, would have a little up, but then go a little down. And I talked to him, and I was like, "Hey, like, I kind of notice your grades are, slipping a little." what's going on? Anything I can help with? Because I want you to do that. And he's like, Dr. Lauer, like, I did every single piece of work and I turned it in and I got good grades on it. And I was like, yeah, great, good job. He's like, but then the next day, there's 7 or more assignments that I had to do it again, and I did it, and I got good grades on it. And I was like, that you are on the right path. And he's like, and then it happened, and then again the next day, and then a project on top of it, and I just felt bad, and then I got one bad grade, and I was just like, I can't do. I'll be burnt out, and that is a lot for them. Like for their developmental brain, they're putting all that in, and like a lot of people listen to this, be like, well, yeah, that's life. It is life. And as an adult, we deal with it. Like we all go to work and deal with that. But guess what? Adults, there's a whole TV show called Snapped. Like people just kind of losing their mind because they're overstressed. Like it, we often don't think we should apply what happens to kids. But if it can happen to adults, even after a longer time period, then you have to understand because of their brain development where they're like that stressor moment is going to happen after a much shorter time and much easier obstacles because their brain's just not there yet. Everything, every guy you talk to, like, I'm 39 years old and I'm a much more patient person right now. And that's because I now have this Rolodex of things that has happened to me in life that I'm like, nope, I'm just going to pump the brakes and see what happens because kids don't have that. So everything to them is the first time. And it's magical or awful or terrifying because that's what they've gone through and that's it. And now as they add things, that's why your first love is so powerful because you've never felt that way before. Go ahead, Blake. I think
Yeah, exactly. I mean, their guards are always up and they're a bunch of like soldiers ready for war. There's always so locked in right now. And then we throw something at them they're not used to. It's just like, flutters and it's like ADD kicking in and adrenaline kicking in. It's a lot for them to handle.
Yeah, it is, and that's why routines matter. Routines are important, and kids' brains crave structure. We talk about that again in the two backpacks, like students, teenagers, even younger kids. Like I'm sure you've seen that with your daughter. Like no child when they're younger wants to go to bed, but they fight and they scream. And a lot of that's just them, one, trying to keep themselves up. But research has shown that when a kid has a consistent bedtime, they do so much better in any activity. And that's a bedtime. And you might say, well, are they in school when you're talking about this? Yes. I'm talking about school-age kids having a bedtime. Like a lot of people, when they're, just because your kid's in second grade, third grade, do not abandon a bedtime, because they will have, like, if it's consistent, they may hate it and they'll roll their eyes and especially as they get older, a 10-year-old might be like, why am I going to bed at 8:30? Like I'm 10 years old now. And it's like, look, this is just what you're gonna do, man. You can sit there but they will do better. And they'll actually, like, all the brain scanning has shown that their pleasure center's higher if they have it. So they're going to act mad because they do want that little slice of independence. That, like, I decide, again, nobody's letting their kid go. Well, hopefully nobody's letting their kid go to bed at like midnight. But it is a big deal when you have a 10-year-old and all of a sudden they had a bedtime and you're like, all right, just, hey, it's 9:15. You should be getting ready for bed. Like that little chunk there is huge to them because it's like, I did it. But they're so much happier. So they need that structure. And the class is the same way. So again, any new teachers out there, any current teacher or, even a parent, if you get a structure at home, it'll help them out. New teachers, get a structure. It does not mean you have to do the same thing every day, but don't make them come into your class every day wondering, like, what are we doing? Like, am I going to be hit in the face with a timed multiplication test right now? Am I going to have, like, guided practice? Kind of let them know, like, hey, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. And your teaching can be very different. But, like, you want to start them off with, hey, when you come in, it's bell work. Then you come in, and we go over bell work, and we're going to do this type of activity. And then you can get into that creek because at least they've kind of got that to grab onto. They're not like questioning, like, what are we doing? How am I falling behind every time? So structure is very important, and that's just for their brain development. And again, even at home, when you get home, even if it's chores, like a great way to establish structure is having them, when you get home, you do X. One, they're going to hate it, but they're designed to hate everything you tell them because they're literally trying to get that independence. So let them hate it, but they're also going to know what they're expected to do. So they get home and it's not this like, and it really, putting them on a task really kind of helps flush that the anxiety from school, and it can kind of get them away from. One thing that is always smart is, hey, when you get home, you put your phone here, put it in a place that's not in your pocket, and you need to do, like, hey, your job's to like empty the dishwasher, like sweep up the floors, whatever your household needs, and it gives them a moment away from your phone. One, they're getting structure, doing something to help out the family, learning responsibility. Two, they can't have any drama from school follow them all the time. And that's just 20 minutes at home to kind of do that, And I've talked about before too, if you do ask them to do something, make sure, like, if it's a thing, let them I always give them a window. And that's an important thing, because the only thing our young people can really control is time. They can't go anywhere they really want to. They can't really talk to anyone they want to, and unless it's on the internet, and hopefully you're watching that. So, like, when they do things, their own time is the only thing they can control. Parents, if you've been frustrated with your kid, like, I asked you to take out the trash 10 minutes ago, and they're still, like, not doing it, that's why. They're purposely kind of saying, I'll do it. Like, that's why they're like, I'll do it after this, or after this level, and they take a little longer. I always set, like, hey, I need you to do this. I need it done by 5 o'clock, because that's when I'm going to do something with it. So I'm telling you now, you got till 5. If it's not done till 5, here's your consequence. So that lets them sometimes they'll get up and do it right away because they just don't want to forget. Sometimes they'll be like, okay, and then if they're not, the important part of that is, one, being consistent with the consequence. Like, hey, if you're not doing it by then, you have double chores, or hey, your phone's not yours the rest of the evening. And if that's consistent, then they don't have much to argue about. Like, because your argument, you're teaching them that responsibility of, hey, I asked you to do it. I asked politely. I gave you a time window to do it, and I'll let you know what would happen if you didn't. There's not much else somebody else could ask for, other than just don't ask me to do it, which that's not going to fly, right? And that's a good thing with, that's obviously works with students as well. Like, you say, hey, get this done. I'm going to give you a little freedom, but if you don't get it done, there's not going to be, oh, can I finish it real quick? This is your, hey, can I finish it real quick? So you can bide your time, how you talk to your neighbor, your friend, whatever you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that's super important. So
yeah, exactly.
Go ahead.
I say, yeah, no, exactly. I mean, you're talking about how like the students just need so much structure for their lives to be more productive. Teachers and parents also just need that. Like, us as ourselves, we need to have bedtimes, and we need to be able to, like, when we get home from work, like, all right, I'll unload the dishwasher, I'll go ahead and cook dinner, and then clean up after that. Then I have the last 3 or 4 hours of free time to myself, because we also need sleep. We're taking on a million of things at one time, and we're always expected to be at a high performance. So it is really important for us as humans, like parents and teachers, to really have structure, just as much as the kids do. With the kids too, if they know you're following a structure, they look up to you, and then they'll emulate that, because, like it or not, like, teachers and parents, we are de facto role models, and they look up to us, and they see us being productive with our time, and they'll oftentimes try to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. One, I feel a little personally attacked by you saying we need bedtime too, because my night owl.
Yeah, we never sleep. And we break that all the time.
I know. I'm always like, well, I could have went to bed, but I decided to do this. Like, I was literally reading.
You're like missing out. We both have really bad, like, FOMO on a lot of things.
Yes. Yeah, I'm like sitting there, I can find out one more thing on, like, on, like, X or something. Like I said the other night, I was like, oh,
you're really just looking up like the 2013 roster of the Tennessee Volunteers. It's really nothing too. It's oftentimes.
Yeah, I go down. Yeah, who caught that Hail Mary the last time we beat Georgia? Yeah, that's definitely. Yes, he did. Well done, sir. I get sucked down Wikipedia wormholes, like, where I'll look something up, and then it'll be like physics, and I'll click physics, and then I'll get to, like, abnormal physics, and then somehow I wind back up to philosophy. Like, I was reading Henry David Thoreau just randomly late at night, and I was like, I literally at one point was reading it. I mean, obviously Thoreau's a wonderful philosopher, but, like, I was reading it, I was like, go to bed. Like, I literally was like, looking at myself, like, put it down, go to sleep, man. So yeah, do as I say.
I was looking up
as I do.
Right, I was looking up McKinley's lineage recently, and I was like, this is so useless. I remember doing that years ago, just looking up stuff uselessly. I even changed my Instagram handle to Go to Sleep Blake, to ensure that I get off my phone and go straight to sleep. It doesn't work very often, but I tried.
No. Yeah, we are trying, and we are, trying to better ourselves in that, as we always do, constantly working on ourselves. So with that survival, hey, we could sleep more. That'd be a survival thing. So let's talk about like just some very brief before we get done here. Kind of talk about that again. That back to school madness. So far we've talked about the changes in schedule for parents, the changes in schedule for teachers. We've talked about some of the stressors of teachers, what it's like going in. Some of the stressors for parents. We talked about how it affects the kids being thrown in there, and then ways at home you could look at that. And we linked it to brain science and the two backpacks, my book. So now we can get just a few survival tips and sanity savers. That way we can make it through and get through these first couple of weeks. If you just started, again in Tennessee, we're about almost a month and a half in. So like we've been going for a while. And now we're kind of hitting that little most of our classes are in a groove. We're kind of getting that like steady, even course. But some people just starting, you always need to know things. So a couple tip. My first thing is set boundaries early in the classroom. I think it's an important tip. Like let them know, early, and then also I'm gonna add this: set boundaries and then recover those boundaries, especially the first couple days, because those kids will hear it at first and they'll ask, and then a week and a half later, like you said earlier, like they just think you're their best friend. They'll be like, "What's up, cuz? I was in the bathroom." I was like, "Cool, you didn't ask, so we have a problem," And they're like, "Oh, I thought I'm here though," and I'm like, "This isn't like, yeah, cool, thanks for being here. You're legally obligated to be, so ask." So you have to remind them, like, set boundaries, like, hey, make sure you do this. You can set boundaries of making sure, like, hey, if I'm up here, remember my desk is kind of a no-fly zone. Don't come behind my desk, because some of these kids, like, I couldn't imagine when I was in school. I sound so old saying that. Back in my day, I couldn't imagine school like even going on the other side of a teacher's desk. Like these kids will come up and like stand behind you and like look at it. You'll have to ask you a question. And you're like, "What are you go away?" You're like, "Get up from behind me." Like go stand in front of my desk or to the side at least. You can set those things, and that'll avoid that kind of stops that little chaos. And again, they want to push those boundaries because they want to see where they're at, and there's no problem. Obviously, I'm assuming we're all professionals and teachers care, and you all are doing a great job. So keep that up. But you can obviously very respectfully say, "Hey, this is an area you probably don't want me like standing right next to you, like as close as I can get when you're asking a question." Same thing. So like do that. Set boundaries on your time. Yeah, I'm gonna say this, and Blake, you can tell me if I'm being callous. Okay. And a lot of places have rules against this, of course, now. But you're going to have students that you care about and love because, again, teaching is a profession of the soul. We love our students. And they're going to ask you, "Can I eat lunch in here? I just don't like you need that time." Right? Like, one, there are just some issues there. And two, you don't need because they're going to sit in there and think you're a friend. Like you need that time. Take that breath. A lot of teachers, obviously, them saying if you don't eat with other teachers in a room, some places you really don't have space for it. Some people don't like to, and that's completely fine. Like, teachers are the farthest thing from antisocial beings. So if somebody's eating in the room, I do not think that they're not social. I'm just like, okay, they need a minute. I'm totally cool with that. So like, you may love that student, but that's a thing where it is not always your responsibility to kind of take that on. Like, it's like, hey, you got to be in the cafeteria or you got to be over here because that's an issue. Make sure not to have them. That's a boundary, and that's okay. You need that. No is a complete sentence. That's, it's very factual like that. So, do you have any tips or anything, Blake? Like just a survival tip that you've kind of found?
Yeah, a couple of them. Like whenever this goes for, students and teachers alike. Just one is embrace the suck because things are going to suck sometimes. And then like while you're embracing the suck, you have to know your why. Like for instance, last week, I gave my first AP government unit test. There's only 5 throughout the entire year, so this test mattered. And the averages were not great. And I told them, I was like, you have to know your why. I was like, this is one test. I was like, I don't care about your grades. You always work. You can always make up things and do test corrections and retakes. I'm fine giving everybody an A. Know your why. The why is to pass the AP exam in May. And I'm going to do everything I can to get you there. So that's a huge one. Like, you have to know your why and just kind of work toward that goal. You have to stay goal-oriented. And then really another tip that I have with that is to really just take a break a little bit because we can always get overwhelmed. My very first year teaching, and this is probably the best advice I've gotten in my 4 years of teaching, I was pretty stressed out like all the time because I was working as first year teacher. You're in the building constantly. This is before I even had a child, so I was just constantly working. I'd be at school 14 hours a day usually. And there was one day I was just pretty exhausted, and there was a teacher there. I'll even give him a shout out by name because he deserves it. Jeremiah Underwood, best guy ever. And he was like, "You look tired." I'm like, I am. He says, I was like that too when I started. And what I did was I picked one day a week. I went home when the bell did. And I didn't open my laptop. I didn't check my emails. I just completely disconnected. And whenever he told me that, I'd do that. There's one day a week. It may not be the same day. Like sometimes I'll do like a Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. Right when that bell rings, I walk out. I don't check anything. I don't work. I just kind of go home and just enjoy a little bit of freedom. And then I've kind of branched onto that now where I try to not work Sundays because I'm in classes and then I also just teach. And we're doing a lot more extra this year to really try to improve our students. I try not Sundays. Sundays are usually the days I don't do anything. I have a really busy week ahead, so I did break my rule today and did a ton on Sunday. But it's fine because sometimes it's just like that. Because again, I'm following my own advice and I'm embracing the suck, and I know my why. Doing a lot of work on my like day off, it's going to really help me out for the rest of the week. So it was kind of worth it breaking the rule. And I also did most of the stuff while watching football, multitasking.
Yeah. Yeah. NFL season, best time to get work done because it's kind of like, hey, I'm locked in this game. Yeah. I'm locked in the game. I got my laptop open. It's just more leisurely, so yeah, I definitely agree there. I love the taking time thing. I love that idea of just kind of going home and going when the bell rings. Yeah. You're never going to get caught up. All right. Teachers out there, especially new teachers, there's always going to be papers to grade. There's always going to be lessons to plan. So it's okay if you take, like he said, like Blake said, a day where you just, you know what, as soon as I'm allowed to leave, like my contractual time is up, I'm out. And that's fine. You can't feel bad about that, and I really agree with that as well. One other one, we talked about classroom rules. Cover them, even if you're a season. Have classroom rules. Don't expect them to do anything. 2, cover them. And then 3, keep recovering them. Make sure you go over those rules, even if you've been in school like a month, right? A month and a half, 2 months, right? I always think around October or coming back from if your school is a fall break, that's a great time to recover the rules, just to kind of make sure like, hey, I know you're comfortable, but these are the rules. Have emergency chocolate for yourself, just like something you can bite into and just be like, or whatever your candy is that makes you happy on the inside, just have a little bit of that. That way if you need a moment, you just be like, okay, we're going to be okay here. For parents, there's survival tips for parents. 1, do not stress about your kid getting the perfect backpack. They're going to drag it on the ground. It's going to be thrown at their friends' feet to trip them so they can laugh when their friends running away. Like, just don't stress over that. Like, it's important to your child. Of course, you want to make sure, but don't be sitting there like, oh, what's the color scheme? Just, and tell them it'll be okay. Understand the new routine, like we talked about. It's a lot for them. So don't be surprised if they're moody or exhausted or stressed. Help them work through it. This is a really good time to just have those conversations, to be like, hey, I want to talk to you. I care about what you're thinking. I care about what you feel. You can do this with grades as well, like with their work, like especially even if your kids are older parents, if you want to make your life easier, check in with their work. They're going to push against you because they're like, why are you doing this? But be like, hey, I want to look at it. Younger students too, of course, but talk to them about what's happening at school and socially. Expect an eye roll at first. Like they will roll their eyes at first, but that is a defense mechanism. Like they're rolling that because they're unsure how to process it. They're feeling you out. And if you're just kind of cool with it and don't press too much, we've all watched those sitcoms where the parent has good intentions and they ask a question, the kid says something and it turns into a fight real quick because the parent got into parent mode, was like, well, why are you saying that? And like, if they eye roll, just like, hey, it's just an offer, but I'd like to know. I'd like to know what's going on, and I care, and you can talk to me. You'd be surprised how many times they kind of like, all of a sudden that bedroom door creaks open, they kind of come out, and they'll like sit there, and they'll like sit next to you and act like they're like looking around, and you kind of like look at them, and what's up, bud? And they're like, hey, my friend, and like that, you got them. That's it. Like that's the victory. You're the adult, be patient, understand that. And that'll help make going in this beginning of the year easier. And again, you can find out some stuff that's going on that, and that they can trust you. So just take that time, it might take a minute, and make sure to just talk to them and keep up with their work and everything else that they may be doing. Any tips for parents of younger kids? I know your daughter's not in school yet, but just coming home when you do have a child who's not in school, like anything that like you think that can kind of help you out.
Just being present, playing. They're only going to be little for so long, so put the phone away and and play with them. Even if they ask you to read Llama Llama Red Pajama 16 times in a row, like happens to me every day. And I always wanted to watch Garfield every day and just do it because you know that loves them and they enjoy hanging out with you and reading the same books and doing all that just because seeing them laugh is priceless. Because especially
Absolutely.
teenagers, they're always trying to stay away from their parents once they get older. They're just like, no, I'm good. I don't need you to hold my hand, and it's kind of sad. So just
It
enjoy
is.
it while it's the last.
Yeah, it is like when they come out and sit down on the couch, you're like, oh, hey, like you're actually shocked. Like sometimes they come out and they're like, they come and
Here.
sit down. You're sitting there and you're like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, what you watching? And you're like, this, it's a football game, but we can watch anything you want. You're like hoping they don't like run away like a deer. My wife will step on a stick and they'll crack and they'll skitter back to their room. We're like, oh, you ruined it. But like, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a thing. Like, yeah, I totally get that. I definitely enjoy it. As we're wrapping up here, just remember to, you know, yes, this is chaos for everybody, for teachers, for students, for parents. But the amazing thing about it is a start of new growth. We're all kind of doing something. We're contributing. As a parent, you are watching your kids grow up. And yes, as bittersweet as it is, it's also amazing just to kind of see the people they develop into. For students, it's change, but it's also a chance to kind of, again, grow and develop. And for teachers, you get a new crop of students you can hopefully make a difference in. And again, we all try and we all want to, but also take care of yourself. You are also growing too. Grow in that this year. Say, hey, I'm going to take care of myself a little more this year. And I guarantee you'll see results as a better partner, a better teacher, listener. So I think that is super important. So as we're closing up here, teachers, I hope your coffee is always strong, and I hope your copy machine is merciful and not held up by another department in the school making a bajillion copies.
English teachers.
It's always English. Blake went after him. I was trying to be subtle. Blake goes, "No, I got this." Yeah. So again, one more time. For more laughter, survival guides in the trenches of education, teens, parenting, life, please make sure to like and subscribe at Educational Warfare on YouTube. We're also wherever else you may find your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else it may be. The two backpacks, right? It is at Amazon and my website at jordanlauer.com. Love for you to grab a copy. Love for you to tell me you got a copy. If you want a signed copy, email us at educationalwarfare.pod@gmail.com and we'll try to work that out. But we'd love for you all to grab a copy and just let us know. It's been so awesome. And I just want to say, for Blake Bellamy, I'm Dr. Jordan Lauer. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for supporting us. And thank you for being a part of the fight.